Hi everyone, thank you all for being here, everybody who's here in person and everybody online. We want to thank you. My name's Sean Nelson. I am legal counsel for global religious freedom at ADF International. I'm also a member of the International Religious Freedom Roundtable and on the steering committee there, who is co-hosting this event with the International Committee on Nigeria. Represented here with Stephen Anada, and we are very pleased and very happy to welcome Bernard-Henri Lévy to a discussion about his new book that we have. You said it just came out this morning, right? Just came out, called The Will to See, Dispatches from a World of Misery and Hope. And we'll get to learn about how the book came about. Mr. Lévy also has a documentary that he produced that's titled the same, on his travels over the last year during the pandemic. And so we'll just go right into it. I'm going to pass it over to Stephen so that he can introduce Mr. Lévy.
Right, thank you everyone. My name is Stephen Anada. I'm one of the directors of the International Committee on Nigeria, ICOM. It's our utmost privilege and opportunity to have the president of Bernard-Henri Lévy with us this evening here in the United States. We appreciate your effort in the documentary and also the book, The Will to See. ICON is an organization focused on Nigeria and the West African sub-region, where we actually treat the issue of religious freedom very seriously. We want religious freedom for every group, for every person. And also, we are also aware of all the atrocities and genocide activities going on in Nigeria, and we rally global community to this effort to make sure every form of religious persecution, social hostility stops in Nigeria. Without much ado, I would like to introduce our guest today, who is in person of Bernard-Henri Lévy, known most widely as a philosopher and non-fiction writer. He's also a novelist, filmmaker, and playwright. He's the author of more than 40 books. Born in Algeria in 1948, he was one of the founders of the New Philosophers movement. A committed intellectual, he's known for his opposition to authoritarianism in its manifold forms and as a proponent of the duty to intervene, known universally as BHL. He's a columnist for numerous periodicals in France and abroad. Through the years, BHL, which is Bernard-Henri Lévy, has written plays, books, and films that highlight conflicts and deception across the globe. His endeavors often tackle global crises and culture wars. His new documentary film, The Will to See, came about in 2020 when Mr. Lévy was a direct witness to countries that suffer hardship or were disrupted by war, endure the most challenging geopolitical disaster, but no one seems to be paying attention. And now Bernard Lévy is here to let you see what many, especially the West, has refused to see. Not just to see, but also the will to act. So we are looking at how this documentary, this book, The Will to See, and the film, The Will to See, will be able to speak to the hearts of men and women in the West and policymakers on taking action that these atrocities, these genocide activities must stop. So it's my pleasure to welcome to our midst tonight, Bernard-Henri Lévy. You are welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, my friends, for these warm words of introduction. I'm happy to present this new book to you this afternoon. It has just been released a few hours ago by Yale Books, the publishing house of Yale University Press. I'm very proud of it. It's a book which consists in a series of dispatches from what I consider are the most distressed places in the world, and I did that in the year 2020, which means in the year of COVID, when the West was considering that the only event happening anywhere was the COVID. We spent a very strange year and a half where nothing else existed than COVID. COVID, coronavirus, was supposed to be the only plague, the only harm, the only disaster on Earth. And the war in Ukraine, the war against ISIS, the bravery of my Kurdish brothers in Iraq, the misery in which is diving Somalia and Mogadishu, and the suffering of Christians, the martyrdom, the new martyrdom of Christians in Nigeria, were absolutely repelled out of our mental screen. It was as if it did not exist. Bashar al-Assad did not exist, Erdogan did not exist, Muslim Brotherhood did not exist, ISIS did not exist, only COVID, COVID, COVID. And of course, I never undervalued the importance of COVID. It was a tragedy for the whole world. And we had to have a strong reply to it. And I observed the regulations which were going on in my country, but I was obsessed by the idea not to forget the rest of the world, not to forget the rest of the existing miseries, and not to transform the wars, the massacres, sometimes the genocide going on, not to transform them into forgotten wars. Because there is one thing which is probably worse than being dead, which is to be dead without leaving any trace, being dead without having a proper grave, being dead without leaving anywhere a souvenir, your name inscribed in the book of the dead and in the book of the living. And this is properly what I call a forgotten war. Forgotten war is a war when you are not even able to count the deads. They are graveless, they are nameless, and they are numberless. No number, no face, no archive, no grave, no memory. This is the worst fate for a human being. And during this year of COVID, I saw this tendency increasing. More and more places in the world where people were dying in some atrocious conditions sometimes without anyone lifting an eyebrow, paying attention to this fate. And I wrote this book and I directed this documentary in order to protest, resist, oppose this tendency. The first pages of the book and the first images of the movie are devoted to Nigeria. Why? I don't know. Circumstance of life. Because I was approached one day by a member of a Christian NGO who came to see me in New York and who did show me images of Nigeria. I did not know, really. I never heard about this massacre. And I did not hear because nobody talked. When I went in Google, in the press of my country, when I searched for information about a possible massacre on a large scale of Christians in Nigeria, I found nothing, or nearly nothing. When I found a few things, it was to tell me, I read that the Christian victims of these massacres were massacred because of old ethnical conflicts, because of economic rivalry, because old ageless quarrels between shepherds and farmers. But the idea that Nigeria could be on the front line, one of the front lines of a war between normal people, moderate people, civilization on one side, and ISIS or Al-Qaeda and radical Islam on the other side, this idea, I found it nowhere. So I decided to go, as I did all my life. When there is such a tragedy happening somewhere, I can write, of course, in an abstract way. I can write an op-ed in any newspaper, but what I prefer from far is to go and see with my eyes, with my own eyes. This is what the book is called, and the film is called The Will to See. So I went to Nigeria. I went to the Middle Belt, to the area of Jos, more north than Jos, to Godo. I collected terrible stories of victims. I collected images of collective massacres of entire villages. And I came back with the conviction that a people was really threatened in its life, was threatened to death in Nigeria, not because of what he did, but because of what he was. And what he was Christian. So to be targeted, to be killed because of what you are, it can be because you are a Jew sometimes. My family experienced that 75 years ago. But today in Nigeria, it is because you are Christians. This idea for me is unbearable, unbearable. So that's the reason why I stayed as much as I could in a difficult context, with the fear, by the way, to put in danger those who were hosting me, because the regime in Nigeria is, as you may know, not only tolerant, but complicit with the killers, the Islamist Boko Haram or the Fulani militias. Have some friends at the highest level, at the top of the Nigerian state, of the security forces. So I knew that my presence in Nigeria could be dangerous for me, of course, for my team, of course, but also for those, which was even worse for me, those Nigerians who hosted me with great generosity and who would remain when I would be out of the country. So it was a complicated reportage, but I did it. I felt it as my duty, and it is the beginning of the book. You have other things. You have a big part of the book is devoted to my brother in arms, my brothers in spirit, my brothers in soul, who are my Kurdish friends, the Kurds of Erbil, the Kurds who took the outskirts of Mosul, the Barzani family, which produced two great presidents, a very brave general who made me the honor few years ago to take me to the battlefields where he was illustrating himself like the generals of Napoleon and defending his country. So they are in this book because they are forever my friends and brothers. The last sentence of the film, by the way, is for them. The very last sentence of the film is a moment in the Karachok Mountains in north of Iraqi Kurdistan. I was just embedded a few hours before, in an operation anti-ISIS with a group of special forces. We went and take a cave which ISIS just left, leaving behind a flag of Daesh, by the way. And there is, the night is falling on the Karakosh Mountains, and there is a moment which I will never forget, and which is the very end of the film. A Kurdish soldier, one of the men of General Barzani, tells me, will you don't abandon us, Mr. Bernard, me. And the last word is me replying to him, I will stay with the Kurds till the end of my life. So it starts with Nigeria, it ends with the Kurds, and in the middle of that, in between, there is a movie, a story, this book, condemning the terrible, sometimes shameful and unforgivable indifference of the West in front of these forgotten wars and forgotten conflicts. This book is a manifesto for democracy to take their responsibility, a manifesto trying to tell to my fellow Westerners that they have to care, that humanity is not separated into different humanities, that we are the same humanity, we are on the same boat, on the same ship, that if we decide not to care, us, the Westerners, Americans, Europeans, others will care at our place, Chinese, Turks, radical Muslims, people of Mr. Putin, Iran, which is for me a great danger at this moment, and that we all are engaged in the same boat, in the same storm, in the same tempest, which is a geopolitical tempest. And this book is a sort of map trying to help whoever wants to direct himself in this tempest. This is the book. This is the film. I dedicate them to all those forgotten people. Some are alive, a lot are dead, who made it possible. There are some people who disappeared since I started writing the book, whose name is forgotten, and their name maybe will be, I hope, will be remembered by my readers only because they are here. I'm thinking, for example, of this lady who appears at the very beginning of the book, Jumai Victor, this Nigerian lady of Godo who was horribly sacrificed, and she disappeared without leaving any trace. And maybe she has a grave. I think she has a grave somewhere, but I'm happy to say that she has another grave, a paper grave, which is this book, because she's named there, she's celebrated there in this book modestly. I try modestly to celebrate her, and I would like her fellow villagers, her family to consider this book as a contribution to her humble memory. So that is the book, that is the film. The title of them is The Will to See. It could have been The Will to Do and The Will to Act. Because of course, when I see the loneliness of the Kurds facing ISIS, when I see the loneliness of the Kurds doing their best to build a democracy, a true democracy, and when I see the loneliness of the Afghan people abandoned by America, and when I see the loneliness of the Christians in Nigeria, I am taken by a furious and vibrant will to act, will to do. Not only will to see, but will to do. And in this book, there are also some replies to this question: what can we do? What can we do?
Well, thank you, Mr. Lévy. I think just a powerful description of the book, and it's incredible to take this journey to so many different places where most people want to stay as far away from them as possible, right? And in a previous meeting, you had said that one of the things that was frustrating was that the West during the pandemic seemed to just forget about these places. I wonder if you could expand on that and why you decided to go to the places that you went to while everyone turned away, and that dynamic.
I decided it as a personal challenge and as a moral duty, both of them. When everybody turns his back, I consider it as a challenge not to be like another sheep in the bunch. So, personal challenge. I thought that if there was one remaining Westerner to go to Afghanistan, it had to be me. So I went to Afghanistan. I went to meet the young Ahmad Massoud, and it was a challenge. And the more it was difficult, the more it was challenging for me. To go to Nigeria was not easy either. It was not easy for me to circulate inside Nigeria, in a country which is really full of secret police everywhere and so on. But it was a challenge. And it was a moral duty. When half of humanity is forgotten, nearly thrown out of the boat, when its fate, its destiny is considered as changing nothing to the world, for me it's a scandal and it's immoral. When I see the Kurds who were so valiant, so brave, in order to defend civilization, in order to help the West to defeat ISIS. And when I saw the West turning its back to them, I just thought that it was a moral shame. So I, being a friend of the Kurds, considering, for example, Sirwan Barzani as one of my true brothers in Saul, what could I do except take my camera, my courage, my energy, and go and spend time with my friend Sirwan and his guys and his soldiers. So physical challenge and moral duty. Everyone in my country was enclosing himself at this time behind the borders of his city, of his apartment, of his bedroom, and at the end of the day, of his little self. I decided to do the opposite. And I probably never traveled as much as during this period, but not travel for pleasure, travel for duty, for doing my duty of a man, my duty of member of mankind. It was linked to the pandemic. It was linked. It was precisely because the humanity was in danger of being split in many parts. It is precisely because I saw this risk of huge parts of humanity falling into darkness, into a sort of new hell of indifference, that I decide to go, to see, to shout, to cry, and hopefully to act.
Yeah, let me thank you, Mr. Lévy. I would like to point your attention to this question because I understand you do not use the word genocide flippantly. But in your view, how does the West lack the way to see the initial stages of a genocide, in places like Bangladesh, Rwanda, and for your book, Nigeria?
This is a terrible question, and it harms me just to hear to it, because it is true that the West accepted with blind eyes so many genocides, starting with the genocide of Armenians at the beginning of the 20th century, continuing with the genocide of Jews when some brave Polish whistleblowers came to Roosevelt or to Churchill, trying to alert, to warn about the Holocaust. Nobody paid attention. Same happened with the Rwanda, 1994. There was a lot of people to care about Rwanda when it was finished, when it was over, when the only task remaining was to count the deaths. But being there before, when the challenge was to stop the massacre, no one. There were a lot of whistleblowers. There were a lot of brave journalists who rang the bell, who said that something atrocious was happening. They were not listened to. Same in Darfur. I was in Darfur myself in February 2007 for the French journal Le Monde and for the English Financial Times. I made a long story. I smuggled myself inside Darfur. I went deep into the country, to Beir Mezza, to Jebel Mera. And I brought back a big story, telling everything. I was published. I went on TV. Maybe I was not convincing enough. Maybe I was too much alone, too lonely. Maybe for this task, one should be more surrounded than I was. There were a few commitments of a few presidents in the West. There was even a trip of Defense Secretary Colin Powell in Darfur, but I'm not sure I really made a difference. Maybe, as I was said by some close affiliates of late Colin Powell, my story has a role. Who knows? And now, Nigeria. Again, I wrote for many newspapers, for Wall Street Journal, for a big weekly in France called Paris Match, for a German newspaper. My reportage was published all over the world. Alas, as far as I know, the killings did not stop. The will to eradicate the Christians in Nigeria is still the same. No stop to the will to kill. It does not mean I don't regret, of course, what I did, the risk I took, but I just think that we have to do more. We have to escalate more in the means of in the organization of resistance in the West and elsewhere. So I have a few ideas, which I discussed a few hours ago in another audience, which I will discuss tomorrow in the Congress of America. I have a few ideas of what can be done in order to in front of the pain of the Christians in Nigeria. We have to act. We have to do. But the first thing is to see. The first thing was that at least someone, an objective observer, who is not a Christian, I'm not a Christian, as you may all know, it was necessary that someone non-partisan go, see, tells, which I tried, which is exactly what I did. Let's see the next steps. There will be.
Sure. Okay, I want to follow up on that last comment that you made, which is the first thing to do is to see, and I've been thinking about the power of creating a film and going to these places that very often have not been very well filmed. There haven't been that many things, including in Nigeria, and I've seen a short portion of the documentary, and you were talking about Jude, and I believe what's her name, and how she progressively has her arm chopped off by militants, and in the film, it's such an incredible moment, right, an heart-rending moment to see her going to her family and her husband's gravesite where he had just been killed, and she kneels down there, and then you say she was gone the next day or very shortly afterwards, killed by a similar group. And then you make a quick cut to, I believe it's this, or very shortly after, to the Fulani militants who you've gone out and you're in the truck. You don't see the truck, you just see, sitting there because the camera's kind of shaking and people are chasing you with machetes telling you to leave. I mean, it's a really powerful thing. And you say, here are their attackers, right? Here are the people to see them. And so I think that's a really powerful use of film, and something that could be helpful for a lot of civil society to do. I mean, the audience here and online right now is civil society, some journalists you're speaking with, government officials. Tomorrow you mentioned doing more in terms of intervention. Right now there are discussions about renewing country of particular concern status for Nigeria, which would open up sanctions based on religious freedom violations. What are things that each of these different groups can do? Civil society, journalists, government.
There is a lot of things to do. Journalists, we are speaking of Nigeria.
Nigeria, that was my example, but
okay.
Anywhere.
Journalists, they can do what I did. I'm not the best journalist. There are a lot better than me. They have to go. I'm not a bad philosopher, but I'm not a professional journalist. There are a lot of great journalists. Please have them go. Have them go and confirm what I saw, what I said, by numerous voices in various newspapers. There are a lot of magazines which I did not cover. First thing. Civil society can do. You have in America a strong Christian militancy. You have a lot of churches, very vibrant, where the message of Christ is very strong and very vivid. They should care. They care about the Christians in the Middle East. They're right. They cared about the destroyed churches in Bartella and Karakosh in the plain of Mosul. They should care exactly the same about the churches in Nigeria. And if I were a member of an American parish, you say?
For Catholic parish or congregation.
If I was member of a Catholic Christian congregation, I would probably set a little group of buddies, of friends, of brothers, and I will go to Nigeria to rebuild the churches. To rebuild. I just saw. I did see with my eyes so many little churches burned completely and destroyed. If I was member of a mega church, I will go and rebuild the little churches. And I'm sure that the civil society in America or in France is strong enough to organize that. Rebuilders with a reasonable protection, and just to rebuild a church. Just that. It would be a task for groups of civil society. And if I were a congressman, I would certainly examine and study the possible, appropriate, and well-targeted and proportionate sanctions against a regime that not only accepts but endorses and sometimes encourages such crimes, which is the case of the regime of Buhari. I accuse the regime of Buhari, President Buhari in Nigeria, of complicity with the crimes of the Islamist Fulanis. So if I were a congressman, I would certainly study the proper economic, financial, and political retaliations against this regime. So there is a lot of things to do. Depends where you are in society. Journalists, worshippers, responsible. There is a lot.
Yeah, before now, I would like to see, do you think from your experience, there is need for international community, like maybe United States taking the leadership of forming commission of inquiry to actually advance on what your discovery has been? And then because, and how do you think when people are thinking, they're asking the international community for intervention, we are not saying they should put their boot on the ground, but from your experience, how has this type of activities from your own experience helped to resolve cases like this? Do you have any example?
Of course, I have examples. When the international community wills, she can. When America wants, America succeeds. When Europe decides, the fulfillment is there and quick, of course. I have many examples because you have the examples which I quoted before, Armenia, Holocaust, Darfur, but you have counterexamples. For example, Bosnia, Sarajevo, the siege of the city of Sarajevo, which was another disaster which my generation had to face. When the international community decided, she stopped the siege and the massacre without any boot on the ground, without any casualty, and in a very quick time. So we are the world. We are the West. We are America. We are France. We are great countries. If we want, we can. If we see, we will. We just have to have the will to see and the will to do.
Yeah, we have some people online. We have Doug, he's here, he's a journalist. And also we have Julia is online from UK and the Code TV, and Rod from Roundtable TV. What would you say? There is a question here before. I know your time is limited, but we want to at least give some opportunity for some 2-3 questions before you leave. What would you say to secular journalists from a Muslim background who say that just as many Muslims are dying in Nigeria as Christians, and therefore there is no systematic plan to destroy Christians for who they are?
What do you say to secular journalists from Muslim background who say, in Nigeria, I'm sorry, but I was there. I am direct witness. Most of the victims are Christians. Of course, there are also others. In Rwanda, victims you had some moderate Hutu, which were victims, but most of them were Tutsi. In Nigeria, in the villages I visited, most of the victims were Christians. But what is true is that you have in Nigeria some just, some righteous who are Muslims and who oppose these crimes. They are prosecuted too. They share the terrible fate of the Christian brothers, which they try to protect. They are righteous among the nations, as we Jews said after the Second World War. That is clear. And they have to be protected too. Same again in Rwanda. You had some great people who were Hutus, moderate Hutus, and who opposed the plan of great Hutu land wanting to exterminate the Tutsis. They were these moderate Hutu. They were exterminated too. The revenge was terrible.
Thank you. Doug, you have question, and any other person? Julia? Julia, okay. Yes, please. We'll try to, should we take those questions at once? And then, yeah, please, those questions. Let's be brief about that because he has limited time, please. Yes.
Thank you very much. So I just read the chapter about the night of the Kurds. I don't know about Nigeria. Thank you for sharing all that information. When you were there, in this chapter, you talk about how the Kurds had no choice but to align themselves with Bashar Assad because the Trump administration at the time abandoned them. Now, Turkey, just in the past couple of days, weeks, Turkey has started afresh. Oh, I'm sorry.
Could you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Roundtable. I work for Roundtable TV. And as I was just saying earlier, in the chapter about the Kurds, you talk about how when you went there, you visited the prison, ISIS prison, and also you talked to the Kurds in Syria, where they were talking about aligning themselves with Assad because Trump withdrew the US support. Now Turkey is starting to threaten again to carry out another invasion. I know moral obligation doesn't do much in the political world. What are some of the practical lessons that we could learn, or the US administration could learn from the last time that US abandoned the Kurds in Syria? I know one of them being ISIS breaking from the prisons. I was actually there around the same time you were there. Thank you.
The US abandoned Kurds twice. They abandoned they betrayed KRG after the referendum, and they betrayed Rojava in 2019 when the proxies of Erdogan invaded. God does that there is not a third time. I hope so. For America, it would be terrible. The loss of credibility, the moral disaster, moral disease would be impossible to remedy. I really believe that. Please, God makes that there is not a third betrayal of the Kurds in such a short time. I hope that Erdogan will be stopped in time. He probably believes in his own strange logic that the solution to his domestic problems is to invade again Rojava. I hope that he will find this time the West and what remains of America in the area in front of him. I hope so.
Hello, sir. Thank you for your investment. I'm Doug Burton. I report for the Epoch Times. It's my privilege to mentor a group of reporters in Nigeria who are trying to give the real facts about the genocide. And we'd like to stay in touch with you. So the question I have is, why does the U.S. mission in Abuja take such a lean toward the narrative of the Nigerian government? Because I've served in the State Department, and I know that the Foreign Service officers are smart, they're well-educated people. They can easily see, if they want to, what's happening. Yet the ambassador, Mary Beth Leonard, told a group of us 3 years ago when she came into the job that what she saw in Nigeria was a range war, whereby you have clashes between herding peoples who are in conflict with farmers and so forth. And this of course refers to the explanation known as the farmer-herder explanation, for why so many people are being killed. Okay, well, I can see why the government is saying that, because it covers up their complicity with the crimes. But why does the U.S. mission take this stance? Any ideas?
What was the sentence of Clinton? Economy idiot? What was it?
It's the economy stupid.
It's the economy stupid. It's the oil stupid.
Mm-hmm.
My reply is, it's the oil, stupid.
Oh, because of the oil?
Of course, arrangements with the Nigerian government, laziness, will to continue regular business as usual, not to risk to create a crisis with Buhari and so on. It's the old stupid. I suppose, because I know this theory, shepherd versus farmers and so on. It's so obviously absurd. You just have to see, as I did, in every single villages of this central belt, so many churches burned from the roof to the ground, to see that this is not a regular war for appropriation of the earth. When you chop the arm of a lady, when you eviscerate another one, when you kill all the children of a village, it is not just an economic war because between people who lack water in the north and who go to the south. This is absurd. So why do the American mission did not recognize that? Probably because it would make the life of the Western governments too complicated. If you admit what I say, what do? You have to take action. You have to draw consequences. You cannot continue business as usual. So this book is released this morning. Hopefully it will be read. Hopefully the film which I did will be seen. Let's see what happened. My ambition, my project is to bring the Nigerian question at the highest level of the government in this country and at the highest level of decision in the United Nations. It is my project, my intention. And generally, when I have a project, I generally don't fail. So we'll see.
Okay. Can you give let those two other people ask questions so that
yeah, if I get another chance, I've got another question about self-defense, but I don't want to
follow up on your response, Mr. Lévy. How do you respond then to somebody who might say, well, we don't want to intervene on these human rights issues because that might cause economic harm or economic disruption or anything?
It's the opposite. If we don't intervene, some will take advantage, and they will take advantage militarily, politically, and economically. Turks will take advantage. Russians will take advantage. Iranian will take advantage. Chinese will take advantage, and we will be the losers. So it's the opposite. Other question on the internet?
Yeah, there is a question on the internet, but let Becky, you ask, and then Father.
Right. Abdullah Becky, International Organization for Peace Building and Social Justice, Nigeria. The title of the book captures everything: the will to see. My issue is there the will to believe these atrocities by the international community? What's your take on that?
No. There is not the will to believe. There is the will to continue business as usual, not to believe. That's why we have to repeat. That's why we have to confront the bad faith of those who don't want to believe. When my story about Nigeria first appeared, I had a lot of opposition coming from so-called experts who tried to sell the theory of shepherds and farmers and blah, 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 blah. I had to fight during weeks and fight intellectually. I lost some time. I lost some friends. I lost some energy in telling the truth, but I did it. We have to do that. You're right. The real problem is the will not to believe. When the Holocaust happened, the informations were available, but people did not want to believe. The facts were there during the Holocaust from 1940 to 1944, 45. The information about the death camps, the extermination camps, the gas chambers at the end, they were in the newspapers. They were reported. It was written black on white, black letters on white pages. People did not believe. Or if they believed, they thought it was secondary. They thought that they had first to win the war and then we will take care of the Jews. This is an eternal problem. And facing the problem, you have some persistent, resilient, sometimes stubborn people like me who continue to explain and who never stop. I will never stop. About Nigeria, I will never stop. About Kurds, I will never stop. About Kurds, I am always on the bridge to explain how a Kurdish state would not be a problem, but would be a solution for the area. How it is probably the best way to fight ISIS in Middle East and to protect the West against the terrorist attack of ISIS. I do believe that the Kurdish state is the solution against terrorism, is the solution against ISIS. Few people believe that. I will continue explaining. I have still time to run and a lot of energy. And
right.
so
and as we have this last question, and then because you have a few minutes to go now, maybe but let's just respect these two questions. Yeah, the French one, based in France, he say his name is Emmanuel Rotimi Awonuga. After this question, please you ask your own as a follow-up. How could we concretely get France to enhance finding constructive solution to stopping killings in Nigeria rather than continue business as usual? Then please let him ask so that we can take the two questions together. So that is the last question we have today.
Good afternoon, Mr. Lévy. I'm Father John Anderson. I'm with St. Nicholas Freedom Group. I've got a question for you. The role and the complicity of NATO in facilitating Turkey, because many of the places you mentioned, Nigeria being one of them, Turkey's got its hand in the mix, so to speak, in terms of propaganda, influence, and making money. But Libya, northern Iraq, Syria, Nagorno-Karabakh, the Armenian genocide, the genocide against the Greeks. What responsibility does NATO have, particularly in terms of dealing with Turkey effectively, and the allies within NATO that seem to be facilitating Turkey's ability to expand its operations abroad?
You are right. That's probably the core question and too difficult for the end of a conversation. But you are right. Turkey, the key. And our indulgence toward Turkey is a real problem. It's difficult because my personal position, I wrote it, is that Turkey should be expelled or threatened at least to be expelled from NATO. Turkey has nothing, Turkey as it is now, governed by Erdogan, has nothing to do in NATO, and Turkey weakens NATO. A country which can buy the planes to one and the anti-planes to the enemy, I'm sorry, it's a real problem. A country who has a leading role in a military alliance with some secrets delivered and who has so friendly relationship with adversaries of the alliance, it cannot work. So my belief is that Turkey as it is has nothing to do in NATO. I know it is complicated because, of course, Turkey expelled from NATO can be considered as even worse. They can become even more dangerous, naughty, and whatever you want. But alas, I think there is no other solution than threatening them seriously of that. This Turkey threatening Rojava since a few days now, this Turkey blocking KRG, organizing a blocus after the referendum of 2017, this Turkey whose madrasas I saw in Nigeria around in the center belt, this Turkey who I saw so present in Mogadishu, it's the only foreign country who is really there. This Turkey who is methodically filling the void which the West leaves when withdrawing, this Turkey is not a friend, should not be treated as a friend, and should not remain in this friendly club, which is NATO. And it is a key of the situation.
On the France, what would they be, then Sean will close out.
France, I don't know. France, I don't know. I should know. But in Kurdistan, for example, France has a good position. France is a real partner of KRG. President Macron is, I think, I don't betray a secret by saying that, a real friend of President Barzani, and France will always be on the France under President Macron. I hope it will not change, at the side of Kurdistan in any dramatic situation where it could be in the future. So France has a role. France has a voice. France has a seat at the Security Council. France is a great country with who can have a great influence. In the case of Nigeria, one of my dreams is to convince France to be more conscious of what is really happening there on the ground. President Macron, by the way, has a personal relationship with Nigeria. He spent time when he was a young man there, when he was a very young man. I hope to find soon the occasion to attract his attention to this dramatic situation and to those unspeakable massacres, which I describe in The Will to See.
Mr. Lévy, thank you again, and thank you for answering all these questions. I wanted to give you an opportunity at the end if you have any closing remarks, just briefly.
Closing is yours.
Well, again, it's been an absolute pleasure. The book is The Will to See, Dispatches from a World of Mystery and Hope. The documentary is of the same name. It's absolutely fantastic, and my hope is that when people see it, it will be seeing is believing, right? That's really the hope. So
thank you, sir.